First of all, we thank you all for having us today.
Of course.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Mom, you just stick people.
Thank you, Bella. Thank you.
Yes, you do.
Thank you for having us today. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for having us today. Now, we are trying to know the story of your mother. It's a very nice story, and I think she's very brave. She actually very strong, and we would like to know the story, and I think also we need to know your story as well, because you're the future, right? Mm-hmm. So let's start with Jennifer.
Okay.
Tell me when it all started.
Well, it was before I learned anything about Islam or anything. I wasn't sheltered, but I didn't have a very broad view of other cultures, and so when I was young, my parents raised me kind of Christian. They have more of what's called spiritualist belief, and spiritualists, they believe more in, how can I explain it? They believe more in your soul and communicating with your loved ones after they've passed, things like that.
So you had that kind of spiritual base.
Yes. I was raised more in a very spiritual. Snake, Bella. Sorry. There was a snake.
Where?
It just went up there.
Oh, we want to see it.
Oh, it's gone. It's gone.
I just heard it again. So you have that spiritual base, but you're a Christian, right?
Yes.
What was your idea about your religion at that time? You had questions. You had.
I did. When people are, when I would go to church, and I feel out of place because when you go, you can't be yourself. You have to behave a certain way. That's how I felt, honestly.
What was the main questions that came up to your mind about your religion?
When I was young, up until probably when I was a teenager, I would have questions because that's how I was at that age. You become more challenging of your structure around you. Even one time I remember my dad, God bless him, he's such a good, intelligent man. I was asking him things and he said, I can't answer these questions for you. But
what kind of questions?
It was specifically, why the crucifixion? Why is it that, yes, he had to suffer, all prophets did, but why does this crucifixion matter? And why is it that he had to die for me to be able to go to heaven?
In baptism, do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God?
Yeah.
Okay. It's
in Christianity generally, and in Baptist faith, which was what we were doing here, which is pretty much all available in this area. He's the Son of God, but he also shares that throne, I guess, in the Holy Trinity and all of that stuff. And those are huge concepts for me.
Now, the trip started. Mm-hmm. Okay, exactly. Tell me what was the trigger?
I love languages. I always have. When I was in high school, I took Spanish all 4 years, and it came easily. Like it was easy to learn. I was very good at it, and I enjoyed it. And I actually use it even now.
Yeah.
So I really loved it, and so I thought that what I would want to do is pick up another language, just start studying another language. And I was watching a movie. I have no idea what the movie was. But I was watching a movie, and it was one of those movies that it was, they had like a stereotypical Arab environment, right? They were speaking the Arabic, and it was at the bottom, and I thought, Arabic? I was like, I've seen the Arabic letters before, so I know that they're not Roman letters. So I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to learn. I'm going to learn Arabic. I can learn Arabic, right? I had no exposure to Arab culture, language, or anything before. And
so the first step is learning Arabic.
Yes, I decided that would be the language that I wanted to learn. And so when I started in the language, I started coming across normal conversation that would be using inshallah, alhamdulillah, stuff like that, and mashallah. And I was like, well, I want to use these properly. And because I was kind of naive, like I told you, I have no exposure before to anything. And I thought, well, I want to make sure if I'm using these words, I don't want to use them wrong. And at the same time, I wasn't sure if I was allowed to use these words because I'm not a native Arabic speaker and they reference God and that might be different. So I wanted to make sure, like I said, that I was doing it properly. So I started learning more about the word Allah and how it's used and what it means when you say inshallah culturally. So then I started getting more interested in cultural aspects of Arab speakers, and that kind of blended into me just learning. It went from, okay, I want to learn so I can use these terms properly and not offend anybody or anything like that, and then it blended into I was learning about culture, and then it blended into I was learning about the religion, and it just came about that way.
So you start to study the religion itself.
Yeah, I did. I started to learn about Islam and what it is. That was my first true exposure to it.
So Jennifer, when you started to read about Islam, what was the first thing that triggered you, struck you in the beginning?
The biggest thing that got me, the absolute biggest thing that got me at this point was Islam believes in Jesus as a prophet and messenger, but he was not the Son of God in the way that Christianity believed it. And Jesus was in a fashion like what Muhammad is, or Abraham, or Moses, that he was just somebody that was bringing God's message to help people go back in the right way. But his death on the cross and crucifixion and his sacrifice and all of that, it wasn't part of it.
That answered
It
question.
And the
that
funny
you had
thing
before.
was, I like I said, I had these things that I'd asked when I was growing up, and
Yeah.
eventually I'm like, well, I'm not going to get a good answer because everyone says you just have to have faith, you just have to believe, you just have to. The things that can't be explained, you'll learn when you die, I guess. But it's just like that wasn't good enough. I wasn't satiated with that, and I'd let it go. I just went about my life. And when I started learning about the Jesus aspect of Islam, it was like, oh my gosh, that's right. I did have those questions. I wasn't really
And you felt that
satisfied.
answer is more
Yeah.
convenient to you
Yeah.
than the answer that you got
Exactly.
from the priest.
It was like I had this square hole, and I now have a square that fits in that hole. And
So the first was the knowing about Muslims and the number of Muslims. Second, it was the answer of Jesus.
yeah.
So these are two steps.
Yeah, those were the two biggest. When I started getting the answer about Jesus and how Islam views Jesus, honestly, the best way I can explain it is I have felt a certain way my whole life, and I had no vocabulary or any way to define and to communicate how I feel. But I now found that there's actually a religion that I believe in because that religion fits me. It was almost like, to summarize it, it was like I've believed this my whole life. I wasn't sure. I didn't know I believed it because it wasn't a definitive thing. It wasn't like it was like Jennifer's own religion, sitting over here by herself. And then when I started learning about Islam and Jesus, it was like, oh, okay, there's a whole religion that way they view Jesus. I think the same. I didn't even know about that, and that's really how it felt. Sorry, I got goosebumps. But it was like that. It really was almost like I felt like I was by myself in something, and then the door was opened, and then there's this whole world, and I fit in that because I already believe that.
What was a step that triggered you to say, I will be a Muslim?
That happened when I tried to find out if there were Muslims in my area.
Yeah.
I live out here in the woods, so there's nothing out here, okay? So I just Googled mosques near me and started looking up, and it gave me the Bay County Islamic Society, and they didn't have like anybody staffed all the time at the time, I think. And so I called, and I don't know if they had a regular voicemail or anything. And so I left a voicemail, that was just my name and my number, and was, hey, I was doing some research online and wanted to see if I could sit and talk with somebody about, religion and your life. And that was pretty much it. Probably sounded really stupid. I got a response back, and I was connected with a sister. Her name's Lena Pippin. And she reached out to me, and we made an appointment for us to meet. And we met at the Bay County Library.
جينيفر سبحان الله بأحد الأيام كنت أنا بالمسجد بالصدفة، إجت وسألت إنه أنا بدي مساعدة بتعرف عن الإسلام وشو الإسلام. فسبحان الله من هالفترة قعدت أنا وياها، وسبحان الله قعدنا نحكي بشكل طبيعي. والمضحك بالأمر يعني تعرفت عليها باللايبراري، مكتبة، فكانوا أولادي معي، والدتي، كانت شغلي الطبيعي، لأن طبعا هي كانت شوي خايفة، بس وقت شافت إنه معي أهلياتي مع أولادي، هيك حست براحة، وقعدنا نحكي سبحان الله من قصة بسيطة عن الإسلام ومبادئ الدين. وسبحان الله من هون بدت جينيفر تسأل عدة أسئلة، سبحان الله طبعا تدل على اهتمامها بحب الإسلام. إنه فأنا وقت شفت هالشيء فعلا صار في انتباه إلها، إنه أعطيها أي سؤال تسألون شو الجواب لهم.
So we spent a lot of time talking, and she just really welcomed all of my questions. She never shut me down, and it was like, I don't know, it was just confirming how I felt. And when I started talking to her about Jesus, and she was repeating back to me everything that I had learned, and it was the consistency of the truth of it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And
so that was a true moment for you?
It really was. It was a moment that impressed me, and it made it like a permanent impression on my journey to Islam, really. And the fact that I was asking these questions, finally I was actually communicating and verbalizing what I was thinking years ago, and then this person is actually saying there is an answer, it is documented, we will find it. It was a huge relief for me. It was a comfort for me. So I was like, okay, great. And I was still looking, still searching, that was my mentality. And she's like, well, we have to go, she's like, I gotta get home, kids, family. She's like, and we have to go by the mosque, because I think at that time, I think it was Maghrib time. And so she said, we can go by the mosque. And I was like, oh, okay. And she invited me to come with her. And at first, it was almost like I had just a split second of, that's a little bit more than what I wanted to do today. You know what I mean? Out of my comfort, what I was expecting. But because my interaction with her was so good, I was like, why not? I was like, well, and I was like, well, can I? And she's like, yeah, like, it's okay. Like, she made me feel comfortable. So I followed her to the mosque, and when we got there, the doors were locked. And so she pulled up her minivan and parked it. And she had these like foldable chairs, those cloth foldable chairs you could take to sporting events. Yeah. We were sitting in those.
This is in the park.
We were sitting in the parking lot, in a parking space.
Yeah.
Because like at the mosque, you have the front doors, you have the sidewalk, and then the parking spaces. Yes, okay. So we were just sitting in a parking space, and there wasn't a lot. I mean, there was this one guy, and he was wearing a white robe, and there's a faucet outside to the left of the doors. And so I think he was using that. I was watching him, and I kind of had the concept, because I'd learned a little about like when before you pray you make wudu, ablution, and so I was thinking that must be what he was doing. So I was just kind of watching a little bit while me and her were talking, and then I heard him quietly to himself. He wasn't making a big show of it. He was being completely normal, and that's just the most impressive thing about all of this, is he was like, yep, that doesn't work, I'll go to the next thing. It was very matter of fact and normal, and he was very to himself, quiet and respectfully, and he said the adhan real quietly, and I heard it. He wasn't that far away.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
He said it, and I just stopped and I listened, and it was the first time I'd heard it in person. I've heard it online, on videos and MP3s and things that I found online, but that was the first time I'd heard it from a person, and it was really indescribable how it felt. And he said the adhan, and then he actually made a place for himself, and he was praying there. And it was such an amazing feeling and experience to hear it in person for the first time ever, even though I've heard it before, and I've heard it online, and I've heard it in digital. But hearing him say it, and I was present for that, and then seeing him pray, I have goosebumps again, but seeing him pray, it was this moment where it was whether I'd lost control of myself at that point, I guess. I didn't have control over whether or not I believed in this. It believed in me, I guess, you know? It was like a moment where it was like, that's it, I'm done. That's it, that's for me. I wanted to finalize everything, and I reached out to Lena, and I told her, I said, you know, I feel like I'm to that point. And so I remember her saying, she's like, I was waiting for you to call me. I knew you were going to call me, you know. And so she set it all up for me. It was done on a Friday. She said, we'll do it on a Friday. So there was, I guess, the maximum amount of people that would be there.
Yes.
And the funny thing about it is I remember it so definitively because it was the first day of spring. I got up that morning, and we'd set it all up, and she said that's what we were going to do, and I would go by like at my lunch break when I was at work, because it was on Friday. And so I remember I was very nervous, and I actually studied the Shahada when I was like, what do I say? I don't want to say it wrong. I have to say it in front of all these people. I didn't want to do things the wrong way. So I studied it, and so I told Lena, I was like, can you tell me if I say this right? And so she was like, yeah, you're fine. She's like, even if you say it wrong, you don't pronounce everything fine, you're fine. And so we went in, and I sat through the sermon, the khutbah. I sat through that, and then at the end, the imam at the time, he said we have somebody that was going to take Shahada, which was me, and I was very nervous. I'm in the spotlight kind of person. And so he brought a microphone, and everyone, like, I got to witness everyone praying, like, you know, when they were done, which was really nice. It was really interesting. I really enjoyed watching. And when it was all done, I went up, and because there's the men's prayer area and the women's prayer area, I was in the women's area, and the imam came and he brought me a microphone, and he asked me, he was, you know, do you believe in that there's one God? Do you believe that there's only one God? Do you believe that Allah is that God? Like, he asked me these questions, and I said, yeah, I do, absolutely. And he said, okay. And he goes, do you want to be Muslim? And I said, yes. And he said, okay, then you just have to say the Shahada and you repeat after me. And so he would say the Shahada like word by word. So he would say Ashhadu, and I would say Ashhadu, like, you know, we repeat
do
it.
it.
So he would say, okay, repeat after me. And I knew it, I'd studied it, right? And being the person that I was like, I don't want to say the because there's Ashhadu and La ilaha, and I was like, well, what if I forget the and? I don't want to forget the and. It was really this whole thing with me. And so he said, he's like, Ashhadu, and I was like, Ashhadu. He's like, and La ilaha, and I was saying it with him while he was saying it. So I said the whole Shahada, and it was a good moment, and I started to cry a little bit, and which didn't help when all the people were excited around me, and all the women came and hugging me, and, you know, kissing and stuff, and it was very emotional, but it was a good emotional. It was a very fulfilling emotional moment, and nobody explained to me until after it was done how when you say the Shahada, it's like you start from clean. Nobody told me that before. I didn't think that. And so it was just a really wonderful moment. And so when I said the Shahada, and everybody was like, oh, alhamdulillah, and everybody was great. And everybody came up and met me and hugged me and kissed me, and it was a very fulfilling moment. And I really felt that when you say religion, I really felt that I belong.
Jennifer, now you're a Muslim woman.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that it made a difference between before and after for you?
Yeah, I'm a better Muslim than I ever was a Christian. Because part of it, like half of the difference with me is that I really truly feel that I have a better connection and a better relationship with God now than I did my whole life.
Does it affect your life? I mean, your usual activities, your behavior towards the others, your communication, your way with children. Did it affect anything?
It does. It makes me it's made me a more tempered person, because it's almost tempered, like more calm, understanding, patient. It's made me more of like, I still get upset with my kids and I might yell at them, or oh, they know I do. I still like.
Come on.
I get like.
Come on, Alex.
Come here, guys.
Come here.
Can you still hear me, Alex?
Sit down. Sit down.
But like, my personality didn't change for the worse in any way. It only changed for the better. And it made me be more appreciative of the uniqueness and the wonders that life has for you. Everybody appreciates the beauty of a sunset kind of thing. But when you feel like you never really got to see a sunset before, and then when you see it, it's amazing.
A Muslim American family, you feel this is strange in your society?
I do, a little bit. When people see me, and the times like I've gone to the masjid for Friday for Jummah, and when I get out and I'll go get gas or something, but I still have hijab because I just came from the mosque. I'm very conscious of people looking at me. And in my case, it's almost like, are they looking at me just because of the hijab? Or is it because that's a white girl with a hijab? What is that? Like, you know what I mean? I have had a woman one time ask me, we went for Eid one time at the mosque, and we went shopping afterwards, and I was wearing my jalaba that I had and my hijab and everything, and felt pretty good about myself that day. And I went to Walmart, and there was a woman there, and she was in line and she was looking at me very hard. I'm aware of it. You're aware of it. And so I'm standing there, and I have this woman, and she's just kind of looking me up and down. And I looked at her and I smiled, and I was awkward, and I just was at the register just putting my stuff out. And she looked at me and she's like, "Why do you wear that?" And I told her, I said, well, I said, I wear it because I'm Muslim. And she was like, "Oh." And she just looked at me, and I don't know, it was a very awkward interaction, but I'll never forget it, because I was that moment where you think, is this person going to start yelling at me? Are we going to have a problem here? Because you are conscious of it. Believe it or not, even in the Muslim community, because I don't wear hijab and I'm a white American girl, whenever I have people come in, I have moms that bring in their babies, and I see them and I see their hijab, and I greet them and I say Salaam alaikum, and they're like, "Oh, wa alaikum salam." And it's funny because sometimes they're really excited, and then other times, which I understand, they see me, I greet them, Salaam alaikum, and when they say back to me, they're like, "Wa alaikum salam." They're like kind of reserved, because it's almost like, well, where's this conversation going, because you don't look like you're Muslim. I even get that in the Muslim community sometimes.
Okay, so your family, they're Muslims, right? Your kids are Muslims.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
So I have to go to them, so let's ask Alex here. So, Alex, you're a Muslim.
I am Muslim.
What does it mean to when I say I'm a Muslim?
Personally, to me, what it means to be Muslim is reciting the Shahada and basically just reforming yourself by becoming Muslim while saying that there is no God but God and that Muhammad is his prophet.
Do you think this affected anything in your life?
This was a huge difference. It reformed me, I think, into a better person. I was not really a Christian before. I only considered myself as Christian. I was never truly baptized or put into the ritual of becoming or claiming myself as Christian. I just thought of myself as.
Bella, how are you?
Good.
How old are you?
11.
Now, what grade you are?
5th.
What you want to be?
Not sure yet.
Not sure yet?
Not sure yet.
Why?
I don't know.
Okay, tell me, you're a Muslim?
Yes.
What do you know about Islam?
It's like where every day you do these prayers and you were really nice and kind.
Mm-hmm. Jasmine. Jasmine, when you pray to Allah every day, you feel He's listening to you?
Yes.
What do you say?
Sometimes I will ask if my Nana's doing okay and I'll be sure of that, and I will hope that the rest of our family that has passed away is doing fine up in heaven.
You don't ask anything for yourself?
Not that much. But I do wish that I will become a doctor when I grow up.
Okay. When you say that I'm a Muslim, in your mind, what does it mean?
Personally, to me, I know that it means that I believe in one God, and that is Allah. And whenever I pray the prayers that I do throughout the day, I am speaking to Him, and I am, because it has made me a better person. So.